All
Where are
right.
you guys
I
joining from?
think, sorry,
Where are you guys joining from?
I am joining in from Mumbai, India. So I'm in the
Nice.
IST time zone.
Awesome.
What about you, Drew?
I'm in LA.
And
Nice and gloomy today. That's no fun.
yeah, it's gloomy here
So,
too.
let's say I would gather as much.
All right. I can see that we have like a decent number of people who have joined in, and I think more people would be joining on the fly. So, BM, everyone. I'm Aniket, and I'm from the Devfolio team. And today we are here to talk about the next track, that is the Unplugged with Nouns DAO track. So, as the attendees might be aware, we have started off with the on-chain summer buildathon workshop series, and we have done two workshops so far. We have done one with Shopify, we have done one with Third Web as well, and today it's Nouns DAO, and we are going to be talking about the Unplugged track. And with me today, I have Drew and Tody, who would be helping us out here, giving you some tips and tricks, what you can do with this track, what are the potential things you can build, and of course, participants, feel free to use the Q&A box to drop your questions. It could be a project ideas, it could be any other questions regarding the track or base itself. And yeah, Drew and Tody are here to drop in their expert opinions. So I'm just going to hand it over to them. So Drew, it's on to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, everybody. Thanks for joining into this track and showing some interest in building some stuff IRL. This track is a little interesting for two reasons. The first is that it's sort of oriented to anyone, whether or not you have development skills, because it's really focused on the idea of doing things IRL in the real world, creating activations of interest. But I think that the fun of this is that there's a huge broad swath of what that can mean to build IRL. And I'm very excited to see what people start to create with this track. The second thing that makes it fun is that I was checking, I was like, is this true before I say it? But it is. This is the only track in the Buildathon that's sponsored by a DAO. So the rest of the tracks are sponsored by organizations, but this is a DAO. And I'm part of the DAO. The DAO is called Nouns. I invited Tody because he is also part of the DAO that is called Nouns. If you're fully unfamiliar with Nouns, you can check the glasses that Tody is wearing right there. That is sort of the icon of Nouns, known as Noggles. And it's this really interesting organization that has this treasury that's entirely existent to help proliferate the meme that is Nouns. And that means doing anything that helps spread that concept of Nouns far and wide. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways that can work. I myself am working on a nouns-based project that is IRL. A friend of mine whose name is Derek G. Taylor, who runs this excellent coffee shop in LA called Manati's, and I put together a nouns proposal to build a nouns-based coffee shop in Los Angeles. And we're kind of halfway through the process of doing that. And there's just a ton of different ways that Nouns has created IRL projects. I'm actually going to rely on Tody to help me think of some of them as we chat about this in a minute. But the ones that come to mind for me are there's like a huge pair of the Noggles at a ski resort. There are tons of Noggles and Nounish icons in skate parks around the world. There are all of these different ways in which people have bettered the cities they lived in, created activations at conferences or various kind of pop-ups around the world. And they have all been Nounish in some respect. And I'm really fascinated by that. One of the recent ones, Tody, maybe you can help me here. What is it called? The little cup and ball that just passed as a Nouns proposal?
Kendama is what it's called. Yeah.
Kendama?
Kendama is the game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this.
Sweets is the name of the company, and they make these little kendama toys. I have one here somewhere actually that they made for me. I'll find it later. But anyway.
Perfect. Yeah, it's this really interesting toy / like meditation exercise where you're trying to get this ball that's attached to a stick like on top of the stick. And apparently it's been like an incredible kind of icebreaker at conferences. They're handing them out, seeing if people can do them. And all of these new versions of the little ball and stick are branded as Nouns. So that's another way to sort of proliferate the meme and do something interesting in the world. So
They've been
these
called
are,
they've been called like a Japanese yo-yo if people are trying to picture them. It's kind of like the
yeah,
same kind of idea as the toy. Yeah.
a yo-yo would be a great nounish IRL activation. I'm not sure if anyone's done that yet or not, but I mean, that seems perfect. You can definitely put a pair of noggles on a circular yo-yo. And so I bring those up to say, this is why I was excited to kind of link nouns and this IRL to URL track, is because of all of the organizations that I've been a part of in this on-chain ecosystem, Nouns has been the one that has been the most excited and interested in exploring that connection between the IRL and the URL, between this ecosystem that we're all building together and the people in the real world that may not be getting to see that ecosystem or ever being touched by that ecosystem on, sort of a regular basis. And the more ways we can create those links between these two spaces, the better off we'll be. So that's why I'm excited about the IRL to URL Buildathon track. That's why Nouns is excited about it. And like I said, I can't wait to see what people cook up. But I wanted to spend just a little bit of time sort of talking about Nouns and why all of this sort of makes sense into the Nouns ecosystem. And before I kind of continue like yammering on forever, I wanted to give Tody an opportunity here. I invited Tody on the show because Tody is one of the best proliferators of nouns that I know, and would love, Tody, if you can just give a little bit of your background and how you kind of came into the Nouns ecosystem.
Sure thing. So I've been involved in the Nouns community since the fall of 2021, first as a fan and then as a builder and contributor, later as an owner of the NFT and a member of the DAO, and now kind of all of the above. 2 years ago, almost to the day, actually, on the 13th of June, it'll mark 2 years ago, I founded an on-chain media collective called the Noun Square. We do sort of daily Twitter spaces and a lot of educational content across all socials and on-chain as well, to teach people how to live on-chain and to teach people about nouns. So I've been doing that. And then also earlier this year, and this is probably what makes me a good candidate to be on this panel, is I'm one of the people within Nouns that probably knows the most about the interplay between nouns and base, because with some friends I founded the Yellow Collective, which is a DAO-like organization on base. It's an on-chain culture club, we like to call it. It is a full fork of Nouns with new art drawn by our community. And it's a club that's basically in service of artists and creators on chain. So our whole mission is a lot more narrow than traditional Nouns. It's basically just, how do we find and empower artists and creators and get them paid and get them exposure and all these great things. So that's a little bit of my history. Glad to be here. I'm glad for the invite. Appreciate Drew inviting me here. Do you want me to speak, Drew, a little bit about my vision of Nouns and what I...
Please do. Yeah.
So when I think about nouns, I think about nouns as being sort of having two different goals in a way. I mean, everything with nouns is emergent, right? So it is a true DAO, and it's not like a LARPing DAO. It's a true decentralized organization. So all of the values and all the things that have become, nounish over time have been emergent with the different people that come and go and join the community. But I do think there's two sort of central themes that have emerged that I would call nounish. And one of them is that Nouns is an infinite art project, and that goes back right to the original Twitter thread that Punk4156 originally wrote about Nouns, and it says, "Behold Nouns, an infinite work of art." And, that's why Nouns was made CC0, public domain, so anybody can literally use the art and the protocol any way that they like. That's why it's one noun every single day forever. So it's like this perpetual, art machine. And over time, it's also become a perpetual meme machine. And because of that, right, because of the CC0 licensing and people just being like, this is cool, I vibe with this, let's make something, let's build something, let's spin that flywheel. And so I think that's kind of like the second thing that Nouns has become, is this like meme machine. And then Noun40, who's an OG Nouner, who's been around since obviously early days, since the 40th Noun and before. And he's also just happens to be the co-founder of Bitwise Investments. So really great guy. He came on my podcast recently and he talked about what attracted him to Nouns. And he said it was like, what if a meme could support public goods? And I feel like that's kind of like one of the most emergent value sets that's sort of come across in Nouns over time, is just like, what if we could use this crazy, peculiar, funny little art project to actually fund public goods, and more specifically like Ethereum public goods. And so that's why you've seen Nouns collaborate with, Protocol Guild and Gitcoin, and try to give back to get more people on chain. So those would be like the two main things I would say to keep in mind when you're thinking about building for Nouns. I think Drew pointed out that like proliferation is a big part of Nouns. We love spreading the word about Nouns, but it's not just like, we're a religious organization knocking on your door saying, do you have time to speak about the good news of Nouns? It's more about, how can we spin that flywheel to do more good in the world, to support Ethereum and support public goods.
Love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And very, very quickly, like my story too is that I have been following Nouns for quite a while, was just sort of enamored with the idea of a true DAO. As Tony says, there's a lot of organizations that kind of play around with the idea of being a DAO, but then there's a lot of centralization there. Whereas with Nouns, it is everything is being voted on by the people who are holding these Nouns, and that's it. If somebody creates a proposal and it gets voted yes by the Nouns holders, it passes. If it gets voted no, it does not pass. That is the way that this works, and this is a fully on-chain decentralized DAO in a way that I think is really interesting. And in all of these tracks, there is definitely freedom to create something within the track that is non-attached to the sponsor. So there is not necessarily the need or requirement to incorporate Nouns into any of these IRL to URL tracks. However, I think it's really fun, and we're all really excited about the proliferation of Nouns. And I think that there's a lot of ways for you to take something that might just be an idea of, this is a really cool thing I would love to do in my area, or this is a really cool thing I would love to do in the real world. But how does this fit into the on-chain ecosystem, you might ask yourself? Well, by proliferating Nouns, it is fitting into the on-chain ecosystem, because anything that is helping to sort of promote, but promote's kind of the wrong word. It's really like this interesting intersection between promoting and informing people about all of these cool things that are happening on chain. The reason that I'm really excited about building a coffee shop that's Nouns branded is because I live in LA, and I know a lot of people in this city have incredible ideas for scripts for movies, or album ideas, or all these different things that will maybe never happen, because there's only a limited amount of those scripts that'll be published. There's only a limited amount of those albums that'll go through major studios. But Nouns presents this kind of interesting alternative way of creating art, where I would love for someone to come into my coffee shop, learn about Nouns, and then put a proposal on chain for Nouns saying, I have this really cool movie idea. I would love to incorporate Nouns into it. Can we make this happen? And the answer is absolutely. I want to go to the chat really quick because I've seen a couple of questions pop up. Neven.eth asks, I built an on-chain summer car. First of all, based. I'd like to see what that car looks like. And I'm driving it from point A to point B, the highest motorable road in the world at 19,000 feet, higher than Mount Everest base camp. That sounds incredible. Meeting Web3 people and other Web2 people, promoting on-chain summer. Already crossed 2,000 kilometers. Would this be an unplugged track? DevFolio, if you want to chime in, please let me know. But to me, that sounds rad. And I think that that's a really, really cool example of educating, promoting, proliferating in the real world. If there is an on-chain summer car, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm assuming that it's branded in some way that people look at that and say, on-chain summer, what the heck is that? That's an excellent example of tying in the IRL URL. And that's something that Nouns has experience with as well. In fact, one of the most recent proposals to have passed is to do what, in my mind, only looks like a Mad Max-esque kind of like crazy rally cars in the Australian desert race. I'm not even really fully sure if I understand what it is, but there was a proposal to create a Nouns car for this event happening in Australia. And that was a wonderful example of proliferating in the IRL. So yeah, to me, that definitely feels like it fits. Someone else asked the question, how can someone get involved with Nouns without holding a noun? I've been learning more and really wanting to get involved. That's a great question. And Tony, I'd love for you to maybe answer it too in your own way. But to me, sure, the two answers are, one, there are all of these channels on Workcaster that you can just post in. So there's a Nouns channel, There's like Nouns draws, Nouns animations. There are these different channels where people are just talking and communicating about nouns. If you're interested in sharing your ideas, sharing ideas for proposals, sharing your opinions on the proposals that are being kind of drafted and put forth to governance, anyone can participate in those conversations. And that's how I got involved. I did not own a noun, but I just started giving my opinion on what I would do if I were voting on these proposals, what I would do if I would put a proposal forth. And I just kind of slowly and slowly and slowly got more and more involved. And also to create a proposal, you don't have to be a nouns holder. So anyone can create what's called a candidate, which means that you're putting the proposal on chain and saying, hey, nouns community, I have this idea. I'd like to know if you want to do it or not. And then what it requires to actually be voted on is people who hold nouns taking that candidate and then putting it into sort of the fully functional proposal that will be voted on form, and basically just like co-sponsoring it. So yeah, there's no need to actually own a noun to be a part of the nouns community. In fact, there are many people who have not owned nouns that are part of it, and I would definitely encourage you to join in on the fun. And Tody, if you had anything to add to that, please do.
Yeah, to reiterate what you said, Nouns is a really unique on-chain community in that respect. Like if you were to go into the Discord or to the main chat channel of any NFT project, for the most part, 100% or 90% at least of the people in that chat are going to be owners of that NFT. But Nouns is a little different in the sense that I would say the majority of people in the Nouns community are not owners of the NFT. So you've got like these expanding concentric circles of like the people who hold the NFTs, and there's people who are building in the ecosystem, and there's people who are just fans of other people who are building in the NFT in the ecosystem, but they're all nounish, right? And they all really care about what happens, and people like Drew mentioned sometimes will be delegated votes and they'll participate in governance. Sometimes they'll just build things for nouns whether they own or not. And the other great thing is that there are paths to ownership as well for contributors too. So there's ways that you can sort of earn a noun over time. The DAO can vote to gift you one. There's other ways that you might be able to earn a noun over time. So yeah, lots of ways to get involved. As Drew mentioned, there's also ways to just build and get paid in nouns, very similarly to base, where Jesse often says if you build, you will be rewarded. Nouns is at a very similar ethos since early days. If you come into those channels that Drew mentioned, nouns-draws or nouns-animators or nouns-retro, those are all channels on Warpcaster whose sole purpose is for you to go post what you drew or created or made and get paid ETH, for doing so. So Nouns is all about rewarding people for their contributions to the project. And the last thing I would say on that too, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there are also a lot of nounish projects that have sort of spun out from the main DAO because Nouns is CC0, and so the protocol and the art and everything are public domain. A lot of folks have founded projects that are sort of inspired by Nouns, and so those are ways that you can sometimes get involved by joining the Little Nouns community or joining the Yellow Collective on Base, for example. Joining these communities that are sort of built on top of the Nouns protocol is a way that you can get involved as well.
Totally. Yeah. And by the way, I'm just now seeing that there's a whole Q&A section. So I'm like now seeing the question in full, Raven. And yeah, it's incredible. That's really cool that you've been doing sort of social documentation, videos using Noggles. That's all stuff that I feel like definitely fits the ethos and should be rewarded in some way or should be seen by the Nouns community. And to me, that feels like a really good segue for, what it means to build an IRL to URL experience that's helpful in proliferating not only nouns, but just the idea of going on chain in general. I would again point back, I saw that someone linked Naveen's on-chain summer car. It's incredible. There's like this flag that says freedom to transact. There's a GM like license plate. That's really, really cool. And to me, that's a great example of creating something that feels very much rooted in the real world and is an incredible way to start conversations, start talking about things that people may not necessarily ask you about. I think many of us have been in the ecosystem long enough to have seen sort of the multiple segments of how the normal world perceives NFTs, Web3, on-chain, so on and so forth. There was a certain period of time where if you talk to somebody that was not involved in this ecosystem about crypto, There was a negative connotation. If you talk to them about NFTs, there was a negative connotation. And it's definitely shifting once again. I think people are more and more interested. I actually saw recently, this is just like a personal thing, but I feel like the gaming community has always been extremely critical of NFTs. And there was like a very positive NFT article on one of the major gaming sites called Polygon.com a couple of days ago. And it shocked me. I was like, wow, that's really cool to see people starting to be cautiously optimistic or willing to interact with these systems that for a while they were saying they had no interest in being a part of. And this is what I think is really helpful about creating IRL experiences, is creating new spaces and new methods of engaging with people that would otherwise not be interested in learning about this ecosystem. And Onchain Summer is such a good example of that. You know, are there ways to create IRL experiences that point people to the things that are happening during Onchain Summer? Are there ways to onboard people with smart wallets? Are there ways to create an event where, you know, the entry is a ticket, the entry is an NFT, the way to get a coffee or a snack or whatever else it might be is through Coinbase Wallet? These are the concepts that I think are really important, because that first step of actually onboarding into crypto, of getting a wallet on your phone and getting USDC or ETH and feeling comfortable enough to do something with it, is the hardest part. And a lot of people are interested in learning more, but when they see the amount of steps that they need to go through to actually join into the ecosystem, they bounce and they no longer do it. And IRL events are a really cool way of holding those people's hands through the process and actually showing them how far it's come. Because I remember very vividly onboarding my family members into the ecosystem 2 years ago, which was at that time much better than it was 2 years before that. And now it's so much better than it was a couple of years ago. So it's constantly progressing. But if you haven't really thought about this ecosystem for a couple of years, you still have a very different perception of what it means to participate. That's changing every day. I'm really excited about the new Coinbase Wallet smart wallet technology, the ability for you to just spin up a wallet with, you know, Face ID, a passkey, don't have to worry about seed phrases. I think that's a huge unlock for a lot of people that are just honestly too scared of those concepts to want to go further, which makes total sense. I think it's very hard to share about those ideas in a way that doesn't feel really scary. And so these are the kinds of things that I would love to see out of more IRL experiences. And I'm very excited to see what's coming out of this Buildathon in terms of building those experiences out. Tody, I'll look at the Q&A questions, see if we've missed anything, but I wanted to ask you, are there any examples of, you know, IRL experiences that you would like to see, or examples of things that you've seen in the past that you're like, that was such a good example of, you know, how proliferation can happen, how we can get people into this ecosystem at scale?
Yeah, I mean, some of the most successful IRL events that I've seen with Nouns have been around Nounish art. So, I mean, that's one sort of potential direction. But to give you an example, there was a film festival that was held last year, and there's another one being held this year called Nouns Fest. And this was like the culmination of a funded Nounish project, which basically gave funding to animators to create Nounish shorts, and then made a Nounish film festival. And unfortunately, I didn't get to go to that, but every single person that I spoke to that went there, Drew, I don't know if you were there because it was in LA. No, but everyone who went said it was an incredible moment, and just sort of see, you know, Nouns brought to life on the big screen like that. Similarly, the folks from Stupid Buddy, whom you might know from, you know, Robot Chicken in your youth, were funded to make a full-length Nounish documentary, and they worked on it for over a year and a half, and it recently premiered at Consensus this past month. Again, couldn't make it to that one. I was really sad I couldn't make it, but again, everyone I spoke to who was there just said it was an incredible experience. So I think there's something to be said for like building IRL events around creative energy, because Nouns has a lot of that. And I think the art, being CC0, being colorful, being whimsical, has a lot to sort of bring to the table where that's concerned. So I think that could be a good direction for people to consider, is like, how can we, you know, take the artistic creative energy from Nouns and like do an IRL event that somehow harnesses that.
And if I recall correctly, Stupid Buddy, again, the people who had created Robot Chicken, initially came into Nouns because they were trying to fund a float for the Rose Parade. in LA.
Well,
Is
that's
that
actually
right?
the subject. That's actually the subject of the documentary. So the prop was kind of like a two-pronged prop. It was one prong was to actually create a float, a nounish float that would go in the Rose Parade, and then the other half was to make a documentary about that whole process and about nouns. And so that's what they've done. And it's premiering. It already premiered at Consensus Live earlier this month, but it's going to be premiering on X, I think, on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, on their video platform in I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So should be cool to see.
And that to me also is an example of something really interesting IRL. There's this huge opportunity to create these floats for this massive parade in LA. And most of those are, sponsored. I'm not as familiar with the Rose Parade, but I think of, Macy's Day Parade or, these sort of spaces like that, where almost all of these floats are being sponsored by massive corporations or huge IPs. I think of, Snoopy or Paw Patrol or whatever it is that has this mass appeal and a huge amount of money behind it to
And
create
Nouns
this
has
float.
some of that appeal too. Like if you saw it at the float, like you had the reporters at the parade, like wearing the noggles, and like they don't even know what they're doing, but they just love it. So Nouns has
Exactly, yeah. And that's what's so cool is, this is a new way of creating that kind of material that's seen by hundreds of thousands or millions of people, and there's this like new funding mechanism behind it. And that's what really excites me about the on-chain ecosystem as a whole, is as opposed to having to do all of this work for an IP that's not owned by you, we are creating this new space, this new ecosystem where you're creating work based on IPs that you are very much a part of or an owner of in some really specific and amazing way. And yeah, like I want to see more of that. So, if there are events in your mind where you say, oh, actually, it would be really interesting to see if I could be involved in that event, or, oh, I do know about this, conference that's coming up, this activation that's coming up. I wonder if there's a way for me to make something that's an on-chain summer IRL activation within that, embedded inside of that. These are great examples of doing it. And, the branding can be on-chain summer. The branding can be base. The branding can be your own project that you love within this ecosystem. The branding can be nouns. It can be, noggles and the characters and these different things. All of those would definitely fit to me this idea of bringing the URL IRL and making things that really require people to ask the questions of, what is that? How did that get made? Is this a cartoon? Like, have them go down that rabbit hole of questions and land at a space where they want to create a wallet, where they want to start interacting with this ecosystem in a meaningful way. I see there's a couple of questions about nouns. I'll answer a few of them, and I do want to definitely make sure that we focus on just on-chain summer in general. But someone asks, can you explain the voting process for submissions for nouns? The answer is that, yeah, anyone who's holding a noun is able to vote on the proposals that go live. There's a window of time in which you can vote. And if your proposal is sponsored by nouns holders, it goes to vote, and then it must have a certain amount of votes that hit the threshold of in favor to pass. I did that recently with this coffee shop that I'm working on. It passed, and now I'm able to work on the coffee shop. It's a really incredible process that has sort of this interesting, just totally decentralized, community-oriented methodology where you're not trying to go and talk to the CEO of a company and make sure that he's on your side. You're really just talking to nouns holders and making sure that it's something that fits the scope of what they want to do with the treasury. Tody, did you want to add something to that?
I'm just wondering if Goya might have potentially meant for this round who's voting, just in case that might have been what he was asking.
If that is the case,
owners or?
If that is the case, Goya, and you can ask in the chat too, all of these Buildathon tracks will be judged. Thank you, Tody, and thanks, Goya, for the question. All of these tracks will be judged by a panel at the end of the Buildathon. And by the way, if there's anyone from DevFolio that wants to chime in too with like the more technical or time-sensitive details, feel free. But that panel will be doing the judging and select the projects. I believe that there's a certain amount from each track that will be selected. Am I right?
Yes, you are.
Cool. Anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think like briefly that makes sense. If anyone has any specific questions, feel free to ask it on the base Discord. There's a dedicated channel for each track. So if you have any queries regarding any particular track, just feel free to drop it there.
Cool. Neven asks, in the coffee shop, will we ask for a noggle instead of a coffee? Yes, absolutely. We'll definitely have noggles in the coffee shop, and many of the activations that have been done through Nouns IRL have had incredible noggles. There's been quite a few people that have actually manufactured physical versions like the one that Toady Hawk has right now, and they're just great. There's a really fun story from NFT NYC this year where there was this newsstand activation done in partnership with a project on Base and with Noggles. There's another pair. I actually don't have any near me. I just have a bag of coffee beans that have Noggles on them over here. And apparently they were just kind of passing out these Noggles. So wow, he's just going to keep pulling them out, I bet. And there was like a bunch of like firemen that came over, or some group that was like, hey, what's going on over here? And they just all started walking away with noggles on, and then people were coming out of a restaurant and they were grabbing the noggles. And it's a really funny thing, because the amount of people that are very willing to put on a big pair of pixelated noggles is much higher than you might actually think it is. Somebody asks over here, we are in contact with the largest drone show company in Austin. I know Base is considering IRL events there. The cost is pricey. What would be the best way to explore one or two co-sponsors to fund a drone show paired with one of Nouns Base's events? Would it make sense to submit an idea like this to the Buildathon in addition to our actual product, or better to seek out funding partners privately? We can cover a third to half the cost. I think that's a really interesting question. I would assume, and again, feel free to chime in, the DevFolio team, that the things that are being built for this Buildathon should be able to be funded and created independently. This is a hackathon in nature, and the idea and dream is to create something that proudly say, this is my finished idea, and here it is, functioning in some way or another. This is the project. That being said, I think that we want to see IRL events happening on a long timetable beyond this Buildathon. And Nouns is a really interesting way to continue doing activations like this. There are probably many different ways to find funding within the Base ecosystem for stuff like this. It sounds great. I love the idea of a drone show highlighting Base, Onchain Summer, Nouns, all of these things. It sounds like a really interesting way to bring people in. I was scrolling through the questions, seeing if there's anything else that I wanted to. These all seem pretty much answered through the stuff that we've chatted about so far. Sorry, just looking through the chat over here. Toady, anything else that you wanted to comment on?
Someone did ask a question about the ERC20. I don't know if you want me to touch on that briefly.
Sure,
I know
please.
that's a very deep rabbit hole that we could go down, but someone asked, planning to launch ERC20 token on Base. Not exactly, but someone did actually create a contract that fractionalizes NFTs, Noun NFTs on ETH mainnet. And some Noun owners did deposit their Nouns into that contract to play around with it, and essentially created a liquidity pool for an ERC token called $Nouns, and then bridged it over to Base. And so there's some experimentation happening with this right now. It's not an official DAO deployed ERC or anything, but it is inextricably linked to the actual physical NFTs. So the prices will always kind of be linked between the physical and the ERC. But just want to mention that only because there could be some interesting potential experimentation with that, with earning fractions of a noun. Maybe you could figure out ways to, give out $Nouns at an IRL event. I don't know. There's potentially some things there that you could work on, but that's the story on that. It's not an official ERC20. It's not launched on Base, but some people fractionalized their Nouns and put those tokens over on Base. So you can, purchase $20 worth of Nouns, and you literally are purchasing that percentage of an actual Noun NFT on mainnet when you do so.
Totally agree. If anyone has any thoughts on, I have this kind of really rough draft idea of something that might fit this track, feel free to type it into the Q&A chat or into the chat itself, and we could maybe talk about it a little bit further. Zaid says in the chat that he's working on a live streaming and content creator platform, like a plugin for streamers to receive crypto donations, asking if that feels like it's good for this track. My initial answer is that that would feel more suited for another track that's more closely tied with commerce, since this is really focused on IRL activations. But it sounds really cool. I hope that becomes a thing. Yeah, even a plugin for Twitch and other platforms. He was kind of doing a little follow up there. I still feel like that would fit, something that's like a commerce type track. Here is a way for the people who are in need of taking new on ramps for getting crypto donations or crypto funding. That feels very much like it would fit with commerce to me. Matthew asks, do I have to? Then I'm sorry. After you, Tony.
No, I was just going to ask what if someone wanted to do like a pop-up coffee shop and sort of inspired by what you guys are doing in LA? Is that something that you
Yeah,
would?
that'd be so cool. Yeah, I think that anything where, it's sort of a track that is intended to onboard people into the ecosystem. So if there's a way to run some sort of event that leaves people walking away with a smart wallet on their phone that they didn't have before, that sounds like a great fit for this track. Matthew asks, do I have to use the Nouns builder or can I use a different platform? The project will be unplugged and ran IRL with a focus on onboarding for Onchain Summer. There is no requirement to use Nouns builder, or is there a requirement to actually use the Nouns branding? You are welcome to do anything that is fitting into this Onchain ecosystem. Nouns is merely the sponsor of this track and hopefully an inspiration for some of the projects that will come out of it. So, because this is a project that is so deeply embedded in doing things IRL, I personally just felt like Nouns would be a really good fit for this. It's very similar to, Shopify running the track for commerce. I believe that's right, Devfolio team, that's the track that they're sponsoring. You don't actually have to use Shopify, but if there are ways for you to include Shopify in that, it would be rad. Looks like there's a question for you, Tody, in the chat.
Okay, what was the question? I didn't. Oh, there's a big skateboarding event in Monterey where I live. The 20th. Is there time to make a prop and get some help to fund an event so quickly? 20th is like 11 days. Actually, so no, not from Nouns, just because there's a 7-day turnaround period. So even if you got the prop up today, it'd be pretty tight to get it ready for the 20th. However, if you could somehow figure out a way to sort of bootstrap the funding, it does sound like something that you could potentially get retro funded for either by Nouns or through this track with Onchain Summer.
Yeah, Easy says, I'm looking to host an IRL event. What are some kind of success metrics that will be accepted? Sorry to put you on the spot, Devfolio team, but as someone who has been a little more on this side of getting this Buildathon going and less about the actual doing of the Buildathon, I was curious to know, is there anything that you would want builders who are creating IRL events to know in terms of what they should be trying to hit in terms of metrics?
I think that's a fair question. So I don't think like right now I have anything available specifically, but what again I would really recommend is you can just drop it in the Discord right now, so I can immediately flag it up with the rest of the team, and we'll be able to get back to you shortly on that. I hope that works.
Yeah, I think that that's a great kind of maybe like closing thought as we wind this down is, a lot of hackathons and buildathons have a very clear, 0 to 1 concept. I'm going to sit in front of a computer and I'm going to hack away until I create this idea and I'm going to submit it. This is a little more nebulous. In my opinion, there's a really cool trade-off where you're able to do things that are a bit more ambiguous and a bit more general. And you don't have to have that coding experience to be a part of this track. And yet really trying to figure out how to make an actual activation happen in real life that you're sort of creating as this buildathon proposal is a little challenging. So, if you have an idea for something, I think that, really the best way forward is to hop into the Discord, sort of submit that idea, see if there's any feedback that you can get for it, and then figure out the best path forward. I would love to see as many proposals or submissions to this as possible, because this is a very important track that's near and dear to my heart. Rob McCarty asks, howdy from Venice Beach, love Manattis, so do I. We're setting up AR TVs for retail. Essentially, it creates new wallets for visitors and renders graphics on the faces of visitors in a fun way. Is there collaboration opportunities with other projects possible? Again, feels like a great thing to hop into the Discord and ask that question. I think that this is a really fun track in that, you know, a few people could partner together to put together a really excellent IRL project. You know, maybe there's somebody that has a great idea for what can be done IRL, and then somebody else has a really great project that they've been working on that needs to be showcased to people IRL. And if people can come together and create something really beautiful out of those types of pairings, I think that we could see some really, really fun submissions to this Buildathon come out of that. Scrolling through the questions one more time over here. See if I see anything else. And then if people, I have kind of seen a few questions about, oh, this noun sounds really interesting. How can I get involved with that? I would definitely encourage anybody who's interested in being a part of Nouns to, you know, just show up in the Warpcast channels and start asking questions there. You know, Nouns is kind of this perpetually on project. There's no on or off. There's no start or stop. So you can really become as engaged as you want at whatever level you want to be as things kind of continue to progress.
And we don't have a Discord. We pretty much just chat on Warpcasters. So
yeah, just fully open on Warpcast or Twitter. You can ask questions and, you know, tag people that you know that are building in Nouns. You now know two faces, myself and Toadies. We both have, you know, public Twitter and Warpcast accounts that you can pester us at. Let's see, a couple more questions here before we end. Radu asks, BM, I have built a DApp. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button here. I built a DApp that allows event organizers to bring their events on chain. Attendees are able to purchase tickets and other consumables for an event in form of NFTs. I was thinking about adding a feature that will allow organizers to donate a part of the contract funds to a cause the attendees would choose. Would you say something like that fits this track? I think so. You know, it sounds a little different in terms of the fact that it's sort of tooling for the IRL to URL, but it's, to me, like, I think that that's one of the things that IRL events need is tooling that makes people really excited to continue to run events. So there's a little bit of nuance there. As with everything else I've said so far, sounds like a great idea to chat about that in the DevFolio Discord and really, you know, kind of see if that fits, if there's maybe another track that it would be a little stronger in. But that sounds awesome. And I'd really love to see that exist. And then another question here. We're developing songs and music distribution protocol. Oh, it's gone. I don't know how I got rid of it.
Let me just see if I can undo that.
I found it.
Yeah, it's under answered.
No worries. Our app is focused on Web2 users, although the blockchain on which everything will run is based. Without a doubt, a project being possible without the onboarding of smart wallets. But I would like to know what the priorities are since this is not explicitly an IRL matter, even though music royalties exist and are waiting to be tokenized. That sounds really cool too. And again, you know, as with that other project earlier in terms of streaming, it doesn't sound like it has a very strong IRL component, but it sounds like there's probably another track that could really fit well in. I'm not necessarily certain off the top of my head what track that would be, but I would definitely encourage you to spend some time in the DevFolio channel trying to figure it out so that you can submit something really interesting for Onchain Summer. I think we can start winding it down if we've answered all the questions here. If anyone wants my opinion on projects, you are welcome to hit me up on Twitter or Warpcast and ask me questions. If you want to continue talking about the ideas that you have for this track, definitely encourage you to spend some time in the Discord and make that happen. But I'm really excited. Like, I'm very excited to see all the projects that come out of this Buildathon, but I want to see some really powerful things happen in this particular track. I have a bit of an investment, so very excited to see that. Oh, and my Farcaster ID is just drewkaufman.eth, spelled like my name on Zoom. My Twitter handle is Drew Kaufman, and you're welcome to follow me, send me a DM, send me a mention, and I'll definitely give you any opinions that I might have. Anything else that we should chat about, Aniket? Was this, did we kind of cover all the bases?
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, I did see like a couple of ideas, and it's great, discussing a lot of them. And yes, I can understand people do have like certain specific questions, but it is best if we just take it up all on Discord, so that I don't also want to give like any sort of false information. It's better that we just discuss it over there and then get it clarified, so that everyone's eligible for the track. Everyone is putting in so much efforts for this track, and I personally, like, when the first time I saw this track, it was, I think for me it is the first time hosting hackathons I'm seeing something which has like a non-technical aspect to it, which is getting like equal priority in terms of prizes. So I am also personally really excited to see the kind of ideas and projects that are coming out of this track. Yeah, so I think like that brings us towards the end of this workshop. Thank you, Drew and Todi, for joining in. I think like it's been a lovely chat we have had. Any closing thoughts, Drew, on this?
Todi, what's something that you're excited for in the rest of Onchain summer?
Oh, so many things. I mean, the builder energy that we've seen already is pretty amazing. Part of the reason why I decided to build on base was just seeing the energy from last Onchain summer. We were thinking about launching the Yellow Collective at that time, and we really didn't know where we were going to launch it. We knew it was going to be an L2, but we didn't know which one. And Onchain summer was like what pushed us over the edge to be like, okay, the builder energy here, the support from the team, the support from others in the ecosystem is huge, and it's only a month old, so it's only going to get better from here. And it has. So, I mean, I'm just pumped to see what happens this summer with an on-chain summer that's like, what, 3 times as long as the OG, with like 3 times as much ETH up for grabs, lots more sponsors, lots more builders. The UI, the UX in crypto has come so far in the past year, like Drew mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's what I'm pumped for. I'm just excited to see all the builders and all the ideas that they're going to bring to life.
Absolutely same. Yeah, very, very thankful for where we are in this ecosystem and for the amount of builders that are building really cool things that I'm excited to use. I'm excited to share with family and friends and people who have never touched a crypto wallet before. Like, I think that's definitely something that we need, is these first experiences that people say, oh, now I get it. Now I'm excited about this thing that you've been yapping on about for the last couple of years and kind of been confusing me with. So, Todi, thank you for joining me.
Or they
Thanks
say,
for,
oh, that's crypto. Oh, that I
yeah.
didn't even.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. A really good example of that very quickly is Jonathan Mann, who does Song a Day, like a project where he's been doing a song every day. He has done a lot of songs for crypto. This is not IRL. This is just like an example of, oh, that's crypto. He's done songs about like Apple events for many years now. And he just did one. And I'm in this Apple group chat where they're all talking about his stuff. And I said, hey, did you guys know that's a crypto project now? And that every song is auctioned off on the blockchain? And they're like, wow, I had no idea. That's so cool. What a great use case. And, we're seeing more and more of those things where people are actually saying, oh, now I get it. Oh, that creator that I like is doing something interesting. Oh, that event that I'm going to is on chain in a way that actually makes sense to me. And I think that there's going to be some really cool stuff that comes out of this Buildathon that definitely fits that bill. So thank you to the DevFolio team for orchestrating all of this. Thank you, Todi, for joining me and sharing the gospel of nouns with this group. And thanks everybody who joined this and is thinking about building anything, building it for nouns, building it for base, building it for Onchain Summer, building it for the Buildathon, whatever it might be. We're excited to grow this Onchain ecosystem together. So thank you all.
Stay nounish, stay based.
Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, everyone. And just for the attendees, next up on like our schedule today, we have the office hours with the base team at 1 p.m. Pacific time. You should have already received an email and announcement regarding this. So it's just going to be happening on the Discord. I'll again drop the link in the chat. So if you're looking to get some project ideas, or if you want to have like reviews done of whatever you're building so far, any feedback, feel free to drop in for the office hours. We'll see you there. Once again, thanks a lot, Drew and Todi, for joining in.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See you, folks. Cheers.